Victoria Roberts. Welcome, Victoria.
Well, thank you, Mark Sublette.
Yes, we've known each other for a little while. What do you think, 30 years?
Well, probably more like 28.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
that's
if I'm
pretty,
gonna,
no,
you
you're
know, be
right. That's
picky.
probably about right, 28.
Yeah.
Is that part of your personality to know, to be very accurate on those things?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so,
I
too.
think so, yeah.
That would explain why you do the art you do. It's very meticulous.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I like things just so, and Terry will tell you that.
Terry Schumeyer, who was also on this program.
Yeah.
So before we put the cart before the horse, the old saying, I'd like to know more about where you come from. I mean, I know you for 28 years in the Indian art business and the art business, and now as one of my artists, but I don't really know the backstory, and other than what I've written on your bio, and it's very interesting. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Pasadena, California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
my dad is British. He was an animator and artist who had met my mom in London, and when my brother was born, they moved to California, where my mom was from.
so she's American, your dad's British.
Yeah, my mom grew up in South Pasadena.
And he's an animator, or was an animator.
And he started working for Disney, and then he started a studio of his own.
And when would he have started working for Disney? What years
It was in the late 40s, and he worked on Lady and the Tramp, and I think Peter Pan, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I can't.
Well,
you know,
all
I
that
was
kind of
pretty young.
stuff was just it was coming out at that time, right?
Yeah,
So he was right
yeah.
at the beginning. And so
Yeah.
did he know Walt?
No.
No. So that
No.
never got into the
But
conversation.
he knew some of the top guys, but I don't think Walt was chummy with his animators particularly. I remember him saying that there was a thing amongst the animators that when Walt came in, it was like, man is in the forest. Just like in Bambi,
Oh,
you know, it's
that's
like,
funny.
yeah, it's like, beware, man is in the forest.
Well, he was the big cheese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
he
everyone
ran it
would
all.
have to behave themselves.
And so when they did animation at that time, they would do cells, right?
Yes,
how did that-
individual cells were inked and then painted, and then the backgrounds were all painted, and then each movement was captured by a camera. And I actually worked for my father when he had his own studio, and I did a lot of cell painting, and ended up, sort of producing one of the segments for Sonny and Cher show because my dad left for Europe and just said, "Here, finish this,"
that
and
sounds like
I
there
had to
was
go
some-
through the
yeah,
whole process of, getting all the things shot and then taking it. Once it was all painted and shot, I took it into CBS, and CBS was like, "Oh, well, this character is too black. He's a bad guy. He needs to have more." So I had to go back, repaint the cells.
Yes, all of them. And so did he do that because he wanted you to learn, or was it like, tough luck, kid, I'm
Because
going, go ahead?
he wanted to go take a vacation.
Yeah, so he really just
So
said,
he just dumped
"Screw
it
you."
on me, and I got an ulcer.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you?
That's what I got out of it.
And how
No,
old
it
were
was
you
a
at
good
that time?
experience. I was probably 20, well, maybe 21.
Yeah, so
or
you were
20.
young. So
Yeah, I
you
was
grow
really
up
young.
in Pasadena, and it's just you and your brother?
No, I have 4 brothers and a sister and a stepsister.
Oh, wow. So that's a big crew.
Yeah.
And where do you fall in the line of,
I'm in the middle.
You're a middle child.
Yeah, older sister, younger sister, 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers. Yeah.
And was art clearly had to be important to your family? That's how, right?
It was, absolutely. My dad had us taking art classes at the museum in Pasadena now. I think it's called the Asian Museum or Pacific Asian Museum or something. It used to be called the Pasadena Art Museum.
Yes.
And we took classes there, and we did, learned how to do all kinds of art.
And was this like grade school kind of stuff?
This was when we were pretty young. Yeah, grade school.
Uh-huh. And then
Yeah.
did any of your other brothers or sister, did they end up in the art field?
My sister became an artist, and she ended up working for Disney as a graphic designer and for the parks. And she and her husband also was there for many, many years. And then my brother Andy is a web designer, so he's a designer, but he does everything
And he's younger?
digital. Yeah, he's like 11 years younger than I am.
Oh, yes, that's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah, and computers just came out when he was a kid, and he just spend his life at the computer store.
Yeah, so he's probably fairly successful in that.
He is.
Yeah.
He lives back east, and he's,
And that's what he does, designs websites?
Yeah, he actually works for AARP. He designs all their web stuff.
I don't know who that is.
Of course you don't.
I refuse to know who that is at this point in my life.
Yeah.
And so, what was Pasadena like growing up?
Pasadena was like a wonderful small town life.
Right.
You
And
know,
this was
very safe and very
kind of
beautiful.
mid '60s that you're
Yeah, I mean,
You're my age,
early
more or less.
early 50s, in the 60s and the 70s. I graduated from high school in 71.
Yeah.
So,
So you were right at that Vietnam age too.
oh yeah, and
time.
Nixon, and I got the whole.
Yeah.
I just really, when I graduated from high school, I just wanted to get out of town.
Out of Pasadena.
The smog, yes, the smog was really bad. I just wanted to get out of the country, actually, because I just was so upset with the way things were going, and I thought I'd go visit my family in England. My dad's mother and father I'd
Right.
never met, and my aunt had moved back over there, even though she lived with us for a while, my dad's sister. And so I, went to England thinking I was going to go for a summer visit, and ended up staying there for art college.
And so, where in England were you?
I was in, mostly I was in London. That's where I went to college, but I would go visit my grandmother in Lancashire. She lived in St. Anne's.
Do you like driving on the left side of the road?
Yeah, I kind of got used to it.
Yeah.
You kind of like your brain just flips and
Yeah.
just does it. At least for me, that's how it worked. It didn't take much and everything was stick shift. So
Yeah.
it was like a little bit, it took some getting used to, but it wasn't too hard. And then, and my aunt lived in Gloucestershire, so I would visit her, and she took me to all the castles and took me to Wales and took me,
Did you start
Lake
to
District.
get the accent when you were over there?
Yes.
I would think that would. Let's
People
hear it.
made
Can
fun
you
of-
do it?
People made fun of me when I came back.
Can you
'cause
do that English accent?
I can, but I'm not going to.
Oh, come on.
I'm out of practice.
Okay.
But
You'll have to do
I
this for
actually
me sometime.
I pronounce some words like progress.
Ah,
I don't
yes.
say progress. Like to me, it's like, why do you say program and you don't say progress? It's like doesn't make any sense. But
And so you
anyway,
went to art school there.
I went to
for
art college.
4 years?
No, I just went for a year and then I couldn't take it because of the weather.
Yeah.
I was living in London in a most incredible place in Hampstead and right on the Hampstead Heath, and I really had a great life there, but it was
Cold and gloomy.
It was like cold and gloomy, and it got so depressing, and I felt like I was always cold.
Yeah.
So,
Probably because you were.
it was an incredible art college. It was in the East End, which now is real posh, but back then it was just the Bowery. It was just really. So I would go from Hampstead, on the train down to the Liverpool station, which was totally a wreck, and just go down there and go to school. And I learned so much because they made me take a foundation course. So I had to learn life drawing, still life drawing, painting, printmaking. They want you to get a good
Right.
foundation and see where your strength lies.
And you had been making art as a kid all along too, right? At
I
this
had
point?
been,
Yeah.
yes.
And what kind of art were you making at that point?
I did a lot of drawing. Mostly, I would say I liked sketching, drawing, and ink and ink, pen and ink kind
And
of
do you
stuff.
still do some of that?
Yes, I do.
Because I don't know if I've seen any of that.
Yeah,
work.
I have.
You should
I have
show it to me.
some cool stuff.
Yeah?
I do like to do portraits. I like once I learned how to do life drawing, to me that is one of the keys to being an artist. To really knowing your eye-hand coordination, because you can't fool anybody
Right.
and that's the hardest form humans are the hardest form to draw.
Yeah, I would think so.
Period.
But
Yeah.
especially just hands and feet and noses.
And you want to
eyes.
just spend all this time on it, and they're pushing you to like finish the drawing, and you just you
Well, they
end
want to
up,
make it a muscle, I would assume.
yeah,
really, right?
they get it's like exactly.
Yeah.
You're developing the eye-hand coordination is really takes a lot of practice.
So you do that for a year. You learn a lot. Mm-hmm. 72 now, and you're 19, I guess. And
Yeah.
You come back to LA, of course, probably?
I came back with a friend of mine from London, and she wanted to travel around, and so we hitchhiked all over, and
America?
had some incredible, including Mexico. Hitchhiked down.
Where did you go?
Well, we went to visit my friend in San Miguel de Allende because she
Yeah.
was going to art college down there. And so we thought, well, that'd be cool. Let's go down there. And so we
So two young girls who are like 19
yeah.
hitchhiking down to Mexico.
But get this, we hitchhike. We're on like near the border, near Sonora, I think. And this guy in a van picks us up, and he's an American. And his name is James Metcalf. He's a sculptor, and he has fled. He was a very successful sculptor, and he had fled the art world. I mean, he was like working amongst Dali, and you know, he was Marcel Duchamp. He was just telling us these stories of they would sign like a paper hanger and call that art. You know, I was disgusted, and so I left, and I was in search of something more primitive and real. And so he found these artisans in copper in the Michoacan Mountains, and found that it was a dying art, that none of the young people were learning it. And so he told us this whole story of how he went down there and he was starting this foundry and getting the kids' interest again. And apparently, he died recently. He was instrumental in turning that whole area around.
So he stayed down there?
Famous copper area again.
Did he stay in Mexico?
Yes, he lived there.
And that was when he was first going? And
That
you just happened to catch him on the way down?
He had been going back and forth, but he had to come back to the United States to get his visa.
Right.
You know, so he hadn't gotten his permanent residence yet.
And that was James Metcalf?
James Metcalf.
And so,
I've seen him in books.
And did you
things.
keep in touch with him over all these years when you got picked up as a hitchhiker?
I did not.
Yeah, well, that would have been
We went down, but we told our friends in San Miguel, my friend Robin and this other gal, Carolyn, we went down there to visit him and to see the foundry. And he took us on the tour, and like he let us stay with him and took really nice care of us. And he was just a very sweet man. You know, he has a great reputation. So.
And how long were you in Mexico?
We were just there for a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you hitchhiked back?
Then we hitchhiked back, and then when my friend went back and then we stayed on the Zuni reservation on the way back, because I had a friend from high school whose family was there. So we went, that was just an eye-opener.
And that was, again, like 72, 73?
Actually, it was 72, yes.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you on Zuni?
We were there for only a few days, and then we thought, well...
But was that your first kind of
yes.
exposure to Native American, real Native
American?
American?
Like the way they were living.
Yes.
And the you know, these... I was like, you know, prefab housing and all these, like they were making jewelry, but they had all these like, it was just, there was a problem with the young people that they were banning like, you know, all these felt tip markers and glue and stuff because the kids were huffing, and it was just kind of, it was eye-opening. I saw how you know, it really wasn't a very happy situation, you know, and I always thought of so romantically about the way the Indians lived, and I saw, you know, it just wasn't that
Did that
pretty.
turn a screw for you, though, as far as Native American art? Because, you know, that's been a good portion of your life as well.
Native American art had been an allure for me for I don't know, it just drew me from early. And we had a cabin up in near Lake Arrowhead in Sky Forest, and it was like literally a stone and log cabin that had been made by this old mountain man, and we bought it with all it decorated with Navajo blankets and, you know,
so you've been exposed.
Buffalo head and, you know, tomahawks and just cool stuff in it. And I was just like, this is my favorite place on earth.
Yeah. Well, you know, that early 70s, especially 72, that was really the craze of Native American jewelry and squash blossoms and all that. Were you doing any of that, like buying
I was
and selling?
buying it. Well, once, and then I ended up going to Colorado, and I ended up working for Stephen Stills, and I had
the musician.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was so
20.
I was 20. I think I turned 21 while I was there. No, I wasn't even. I was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you end up with
Turned
Stephen
19 when I was
Stills?
there.
How did that even occur?
Well, that's a long story.
That's all right. I got a long time here. Just
Yeah,
thinking.
well,
we got endless
when
amount
I
of
was
tape.
okay, let me backtrack a little bit
Okay.
because this is kind of a key thing. When I was living in London, my boyfriend was best friends with Pete Townsend.
Okay.
And so I was hanging out with, Pete Townsend, going to their concerts with some of those guys. And then I was also the Faces. My boyfriend would like play football with them in the park on Sundays. And so we were like hanging out. I was hanging out with all these musicians, and I was really a musician myself, and I really loved that. And so when I came home and then my friend left and the traveling stopped, I was sitting there listening to a Stephen Stills record, and I thought, I should be hanging out with that guy, so.
I think they call it a groupie, don't they?
Well, I really wasn't interested in like going and sleeping with them. I was interested in like hanging out with people like that because I just felt like
you like the creative juice.
Yeah.
Well, who wouldn't?
And I just thought
they're amazing.
I went to England. When I came back, my friends were sitting on the same couch smoking the same joint. Just like I thought, this is just not for me.
Yeah.
I
want
more from my life. And so I heard Stephen Stills was in Colorado, and I was going to this festival called the Rainbow People or something festival. And so I went to that, and then somebody there said, oh yeah, he lives in Boulder. Stephen Stills lives in Boulder, because I was playing a Stephen Stills song.
What did you play? I
play the guitar.
Yeah, okay. And do you still play?
I do.
Oh, good.
I have a collection of guitars.
Yeah.
And so I go to Boulder. And so I start sleuthing around, seeing like, well, where does he live? Let's see if I can find this guy. And I was kind of giving up. I was going, this is stupid. And I was sitting in front of the telephone company, and I saw, it was after hours, and I saw a guy in there cleaning. I thought, you know what? That's where I could find out where he is. And so I go into the phone company, and this guy, I give him this sad story. I came to see a friend, and I can't find him, and I need to look, so he let me in, and we started looking through. I found Stephen's address, but it was like up on the mountain. It was like this star route thing, and I was like, oh my goodness. I ended up hiking up there and finding the house, and
hitchhiking, I think.
Yeah. So I ended up knocking on the door, and this is where the story gets kind of funny.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I look inside. Nobody's there. I look inside, and the place is a disaster.
Yeah.
There's
Rockstar.
things growing in the sink. There's dishes piled up. There's like a log stuck in the fire that's sticking out into the living room that's like partially burnt, and it's like just the place is just disaster. It's a little cabin. It was on the cover of the Stephen Stills first solo album.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
I do.
He's sitting out there in the snow, I think. Anyway, so after a while, I'm waiting, and I'm just like, I think, God, I should go in there and just clean this house up, for him. And so I ended up going in.
Oh, breaking and entering. Go ahead.
Yeah. I go in, and I completely, it took me like 3 days, just inside the cupboards, inside the refrigerators, scrubbing everything, getting everything meticulously clean, organizing all his papers, just completely. And then, boom, he walks in with a roadie, and he just goes, hi, my name is Stephen. What's your name?
Sure, what the?
And I go, my name is Vicky. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I saw that your house needed cleaning, and I really needed a place to stay. So he said, oh, that's cool. Well, I guess, you didn't steal anything. And you look at, he was just like amazed at the house. He was like, you did this? And I go, yeah. And so then he was like, oh, well, I'm going to work on this song with my roadie, because he knows Spanish. And so he goes, why don't you help me pack? Because I have to go to LA for a concert. So he showed me how he likes his clothes folded. And
you became his assistant.
Yeah, I did. And like when he was leaving, he says, well, I don't know you from Adam, but if you were going to steal something, or if you went,
you would have
already done it. So he says, I guess I can trust you. You want to just, watch the house for me, and
chill.
Yeah. So, Yeah, so that was the beginning of that story. And then
how
I
long
ended
did
up
you stay with
getting hired by his manager
Yeah.
because he needed a housekeeper. And then, like, shortly thereafter, he moved to this big palatial house in Rollinsville, which is over by Netherlands, on the other side above Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And just like acreage with a lake. And it was really cool. And it's like now I was like taking care of this huge house.
Right.
And cooking for him. I was basically hired to be his mom.
Yeah.
That's the way it looked.
And how old was Steven still at that time? 35?
No, I think he was, I don't know. I think I was like, 19? He was probably 29, 28, 29, something like that. Yeah.
So how long did you stay as the
I
with
ended
the Still
up I ended
family?
up getting finally getting nabbed by his manager wanted me to work for him, so I ended up going down to his managers after a while, and I ended up being in that whole thing for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just it was burnout time. I mean, these guys were doing lots of
Drugs.
coke and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Everybody knows. I mean,
Yeah.
and lots of alcohol, and it was just a little too crazy. I got sick from trying it because they were just always like pushing it.
Vicky.
Yeah, and I
Right.
was like, finally I went to the doctor, and he said whatever you're doing, you got to stop. Like I was getting just really sick. So I did. I stopped, but it was an experience. And
Yeah.
I guess I realized I don't really want to hang out with these people. This
Seems
is
fun,
not
but-
where I want to be, and I just need to be doing something of my own. So
And so you
I went back to California.
And so you took, and did you hitchhike back there too?
No.
But this time
I
you
flew
actually
back.
had some money, right?
Yeah, I had money. And this is this is how this started, is like when I was living in Boulder and I had like $100 a week clear with all expenses paid. And I had a car that they gave me. And, so
Yeah.
I just was spending my money on Navajo jewelry. And I started collecting jewelry. And I was like, there was a shop in town that was cool. And they had a lot of stuff.
And were you buying old stuff or new stuff? Probably
Old
new
stuff.
Oh, you were. You knew that right off the bat. That's interesting.
I like the old stuff.
Yeah,
I've
very
always
cool.
liked the old
Yeah.
stuff. In everything. I mean, like the old cabin, I like things with patina and with,
So you were putting your money, what you earned, into jewelry for yourself, and at some point
As a
you go, I
teenager,
can
yeah.
maybe buy and sell this stuff too?
No.
No, you were a collector.
No, I just collected.
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't even think of it as something I could do for a living.
Right, I'm sure
that
not.
came later.
Yeah. So you go back to California, you go to Pasadena?
I
or you
went
go
back to California, and I thought, I'm just going to save up my money. I started working for my dad again and making,
And this is when you
doing
started
animation.
working the animation for him.
Yeah, more seriously. And I went back to college. I took, I took an etching class and some other art classes and music classes.
Mm-hmm. You were still trying to find your voice or what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I was. And then I ended up thinking, I gotta go. I'm gonna find my utopia.
Mm-hmm.
My utopia will be somewhere else, like maybe in Spain or Portugal or somewhere, like cool. And so I set out saving enough money to get myself back over to Europe. And I spent almost a year traveling around by myself.
In Europe.
Taking trains, but mostly hitchhiking. Yeah.
Everywhere.
And jumping out of cars when I had to and things like that.
You mean when you were afraid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was...
You can't just say that and then not tell
no,
me what that
I
is.
literally had two guys pick me up near Madrid, and they started straying off the path. And as they were going around a corner, I could hear them talking, and I understood more Spanish than they thought.
Yeah.
And then I started acting crazy and getting them all disconcerted. And that was one of my ploys. And grabbed my stuff, and just when they were going around the corner, I jumped out of the car while I was moving.
Did you get hurt?
No.
Yeah, you just rolled and kept
They
going.
were so shocked, I think they just kind of let me go.
This girl's crazy.
Yeah.
We better leave this one alone.
Yeah. That happened a few times. But
More than once.
things like that. I ran into a lot of problems with being a single girl and with men. But I always landed on my feet. I'm grateful to say that with all my stupidity.
Yeah. In retrospect, you might want to...
I had a strength in myself that I wasn't going to lay down and let things happen.
Yeah. And so you did that for a year, and you went to Madrid, Portugal. Where else?
I went down to Morocco.
Oh, wow.
And literally the police put me on a bus back to the border to Ceuta so I would take the ferry back over to Spain, because they said a single woman cannot travel by herself in this country.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't force me legally, but they strongly advised it, and they literally physically put me on the bus.
Yeah. Probably a good move, actually.
Yeah. Probably wise.
Yeah.
But I was naive, definitely, but I was so fascinated by Morocco.
Have you ever gone back?
No, and I really want to. That's on my list, definitely. I found it a very fascinating country.
And so when you came back from doing your walkabout, did you go back to California again?
I did. I came back to
and
California.
Now you're like 23, 24?
It was 70. I was 21, actually. I was 74 when I came back. So I was in there from 73 to 74. So.
Okay.
I worked in London for a while and then sort of just traveled around.
And so when you came back, what was the plan then? Or did you have one? My guess is you didn't.
I didn't have a plan. I wanted to I met these people in Holland and I was traveling with them for a while, and they were scavengers. They would make these houseboats into these beautiful places with driftwood. And, I just kind of thought, I just want to, live on the land. And, I just wanted to go, I don't know. I was crazy. I just really was kind of lost at that point. I ended up, within a year of me being back, I ended up getting married to the first,
Decent
person
guy.
I met, who was he was a musician, and we were singing and writing songs together, and we ended up getting married and, having a couple of kids.
Yeah.
So,
And how long did that last?
7 years.
Yeah, long enough.
Yeah.
And was he a good musician? Did he?
Yeah, he was really talented singer, and he played keyboard and guitar and bass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you see maybe that was a track
that was
for you at that point?
Yeah, and I thought, well, I could be a musician, and we became staff songwriters for a publishing company that was a pretty famous publishing company, and we thought we had this bright career. And Barry White, actually, who had also been signed by that company, he offered us a record deal because he was starting a label.
Barry White.
Yeah. So he and his wife Goldine invited us over for lunch in their house in Encino, and we were sitting there. Goldine, by the way, had like fingernails that were about, I don't know, 10 inches long.
Yeah.
And I
really
was
long.
like looking at them, and I was like, Goldine, how do you dial the phone? I really wanted to ask her something else, like,
just like how do you use
wipe
toilet
yourself?
paper? Yeah.
But she was like, well, I either use a utensil, I have my people do that. Literally, that's the way she was saying it. But I was.
Well, the problem is when you have those things like that, you actually lose the muscle tone in your fingers.
Yeah.
And they atrophy.
I just was like, why would you handicap yourself like that? But that was her thing.
That was her thing.
And, that was her thing. So then they gave us this contract. He gave us this contract, and we took it to a lawyer, and the lawyer had been a lawyer for Bob Dylan, and we got a good reference to a guy who knew his stuff. And so he revised the contract, and we gave it back to Barry. What he told us was, the lawyer, he said, this sets the industry back 20 years.
Ooh,
it's like 5% of 20% or something like really, really, like
aggressive.
Abysmal. Yeah. And he goes, if you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror, you will be sorry if you sign this. So we ended up, revising it and giving it back. And then we get this message. We were out one day and we come back, and there's a message from Barry White himself. And he goes, well, I looked at the revisions. He goes, I guess you don't want to do business with me. So that was that. Never heard from him again.
Yeah. So do you ever think, what if I had to sign that?
I know Wayne, my ex-husband, does.
Yeah.
He said it to me.
Regrets?
He does. Yeah. He goes, I wish we, it's one of my great regrets.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah. because what would have happened? But then I don't remember ever hearing anything that really happened with his label, but maybe we would have. Who knows? But he wanted creative control of everything. He wanted us to give him all of our publishing from everything that we had ever, we had to get it back from the publishing company. And he would have.
Yeah, he would have owned
We
you.
would have made. He would have owned us.
You probably learned more about taking responsibility for your own actions and what you're doing. That helped you later on in life in a lot of other ways than you would have gotten out of that deal.
Yeah.
I'm sure you made the right move.
Yeah.
Your lawyer was right. He was giving you good advice.
I think he was.
Yeah.
I feel like we made the right decision.
You might have been just really, really bitter if it did really well and you got nothing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
who knows? Clearly, it's not something you dwell on, but it sounds like your ex-husband might still have a little.
Yeah, I think he wishes we had bit the bullet and gone ahead.
So did that end that kind of being turned down and things not going as you anticipated? That kind of help with the demise of where you were headed as a couple?
Eventually, yeah. He started, he kind of gave up, and he started working for Warehouse Records, and he became an executive for them. And we had both worked at the record stores and stuff, but then he ended up in the executive.
Right. So the dream kind of ended and reality took place.
Yeah.
And you had 2 kids, right?
And we ended up with having 2 kids, which, can never, that was just the best part ever.
Yeah.
Having them. And so that was great, but our relationship kind of deteriorated. And I was going through some stuff that was coming up from my childhood, some, abuse issues and stuff that were haunting me, which I thought I could just ignore, but they were
there was
not
some stuff.
ignorable.
There was some family dynamics that were not conducive to good mental health as you grew up.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was it was stuff I needed to either face or have it be haunting me and, causing me problems the rest of my life. So.
Yeah. So you dealt with those.
I started dealing with it.
Yeah.
Not completely, but later I got more complete with my
and are you
healing.
More healed at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You've gotten through that.
I feel like totally. I've figured it out.
grips,
I figured out what needed to be, looked at and figured out and faced it all.
Yeah, and that
But
takes
face
a while,
the pain.
right?
It's very painful.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, but it's really important. If you have some things that are really, are your ghosts, you have to.
Especially from childhood, I think.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Does not go away easily.
Right. So anyway, we ended up splitting up, and it took a while, but I was doing some artwork, but layout and paste up, and like graphic design work.
And that's how you
like
started making your money at that point, was doing graphic stuff?
Yeah, I was trying to make a living whatever way I could. And, I actually worked at a TV cable company called On TV.
Yeah,
which was,
I remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I worked for them for a while, and
What did you do there?
I actually was just a customer service representative.
But you're still making art.
I was still making art.
And were you still buying Native American stuff, jewelry and things?
No, I wasn't. I was pretty much mom, for my
Yeah.
kids. And, I was sharing the responsibilities. He had the kids some of the time. I had them a lot of the time. But we did a shared parenting. And so that took up a lot of my space. But then, so.
And at some point, you get into meeting with Kim Martindale.
Yeah, I ended up getting remarried, several years later, and working. I was managing an art gallery. That's what I ended up doing. Actually, I thought I want to start a business. I saw the book that Mary Emmerling did.
Yes.
Called American Country Home.
Yeah, she used to be my neighbor in Santa Fe.
Did she?
For many years, yeah.
American Country? I can't remember what it was called.
She did a couple of them.
But it was had Al Louvan's collection in it, and it had all this cool Western stuff. And I was thinking, see, then I started realizing there's a business in that.
Yes.
I saw the jewelry and stuff, and
this was kind of 80s time frame?
This is in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I thought, okay, well, I need to get some business experience. So, and if I'm going to start a gallery or something. So I ended up managing an art gallery in LA, and that's where I met my second husband.
And what was the art gallery's name?
Del Mono Gallery.
Is it still in business?
No, both of them have passed away.
Yeah. And what kind of art was
The
that?
owners. It was jewelry, wood turned.
More arts and crafts kind of stuff?
Yeah, more like it's a fine craft gallery.
Yes. Yeah.
Weavings, all kinds of like fine crafts, which is
Including native stuff?
no native stuff.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't their thing. They were in Brentwood, and
That's a nice place.
we used to, O.J. Simpson used to come in, Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean, it was like
Yeah, it was a who's who.
Yeah, and then they wanted me to help them open the gallery in Pasadena that they wanted to open in Old Town. It was like one of the very first galleries that opened in Old Town when they first did the resurgence.
And what year would have this been?
This was in 80, I want to say like 86, maybe, 87. Yeah, probably
So
87.
they're expanding.
They're expanding, and
That's doing well.
And I helped set up the entire gallery and like got all the artists to give work for that gallery and stuff, and that's where I met Dave Zweifel, which was my second husband, and he was a ceramicist, and he did woodworking, and so as I got to know him and our relationship developed, I was going up to visit him up near Santa Barbara and started helping him out, and eventually I left the gallery and married him, and I was doing the artwork with him. And then I started doing assemblage art.
So when you were working with him, were you helping promote his art and you were doing your own? Or
No, I was actually helping him do his art. I was painting. I was doing all the finishing work.
Yeah.
I didn't like working with the clay that much, but I would do all the painting, the airbrush, and finish like detail
this is all
work.
ceramic stuff. Mm-hmm. And you started making your assemblages.
And then I started making assemblage, and I took Ron Robertson is an assemblage artist up there I was really admired his work. And I found out that he was teaching at Santa Barbara City College, so I went and took classes from him. Wow. And so that's when he started giving me these ideas about how to, take just found objects and use them. But we had gone to New York, and I had seen like Jasper Johns and Rauschenberg and Nevelson, Louise Nevelson.
Yeah.
And just got really
And how about the boxes?
jazzed.
How about?
I didn't see Joseph Cornell. I never saw Joseph Cornell's stuff until after I started doing work, and people started telling me that your stuff looks like, you must have been inspired by Joseph Cornell. And I said, who's that?
Yeah, I think that's the first thing I said to you when I saw your Cornell boxes.
So then people started giving me books on him, and I started reading up, and I read his biography, and I was like, wow, this guy was a little scary, but, I get it. Yeah. I see where the connection is, and that's how when I first started, I was doing all things in boxes, and it was kind of scenes like how he was doing.
But it was a natural, just organic kind of thing that you go, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And did you start selling your art at that time, and this was 86?
No,
Or were you just making it more for you?
I was making it, and then we ended up, and then I got pregnant, and I was, we were trying to keep up with the orders of the cactus, and then we moved up to the mountains, and then everything kind of fell apart because we didn't have our studio built by the winter, and then we were trying to make things, and everything fell apart with that business, and so.
And that had to be hard on the marriage then.
And that's when he decided to go back to school and get his credential for teaching. That's when I started my business, and it was like 90.
90.
Yeah.
So about 4 years after this, you said that you were making a next kind of switch in 1990.
Yeah, I was starting to buy things and sell them at little, and then I bought an estate.
Yeah.
I bought an estate that was all Western stuff, and I started going to the flea market to Marin City Flea Market, and I started selling there.
So you were living up in San Francisco.
We moved up to Sacramento so he could go to school to get his credential.
Right.
And we were living in his sister's back house just so he could do that.
Right. And you had 3 kids?
And I just had, actually my oldest, Jamie, came up with us, and he was living with us, but Ben was still living with his dad. And I had Ryland.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I started doing these really elaborate displays at the flea market. And
I bet you did.
Danny Neal, it was the first person. He came
yeah.
up to me, he goes, you should be doing the real shows. And I
Yeah.
go, what's the real shows?
Yeah.
So he started telling me about High Noon. It was like High Noon's, it was like in their first year
Yeah, that would
when I
have
met
been
him.
just a lot of the shows were
Early
really kinda,
90s, yeah.
Marin was going on and those kind of things.
So I ended up going and doing the High Noon show.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared a booth with him, and it was like I met Doug Billmeyer,
Yeah.
and it was like he came to my booth every time I set up.
And Doug
after
works
that.
for Ralph Lauren.
Doug is with Ralph Lauren.
Yeah, and has been forever, and a wonderful guy.
And they've been buying from me ever since. And whether it was me making stuff from old parts for them, or whether it was them buying the stuff that I had, like the old boots and the, cool
So you
jewelry.
were buying whatever you felt was interesting and learning about the material.
And learning about, that's when I met Mark Winter at High Noon, and he became my mentor. I mean, he said, anytime you want to call me,
Nice.
send me pictures, just send me a picture and I'll tell you what it is, and we'll talk
Right.
about it, and I learned a lot. And he told me what books to read, and the weavings were a big part of my thing, and I was really into the Mexican weavings too, the saltillos and the early Mexican vaquero
And that's I bet he
Hacendado
loved
stuff.
that. So he's like,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
teach her. She'll
So-
find me a nice classic saltillo sometime.
Yeah, right?
He probably did.
Yeah, no, I actually but he
Yeah.
definitely taught me a lot. And then from Sacramento, my business was like rolling by the time my husband said he got his credential, but he didn't really want to teach. So he decided, after all,
Right.
we ended up moving to Pagosa Springs.
Oh, yeah.
Near
Mark
Mark
was
and
there?
Linda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the
And
reason?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
that's
was the
cool.
reason. I just
didn't know
thought
that
that would be
story.
a good place
Yeah.
to start out.
It is a beautiful place, too.
And it was so beautiful. And David never lived anywhere but California, and he was just fell in love with Colorado. He fell in love with Pagosa.
Mm-hmm.
And, hey, what's not to love?
Yeah. So how long did you stay in Pagosa Springs?
We were there a couple of years,
Yeah,
and
so-
then I realized it was really hard to live there, and I'd have to drive everywhere. I was
Yeah.
gone all the time. I
and
was
you
like,
couldn't
this
get
isn't
material. There's probably
fair.
not a lot of material in that little area. You had
There
to go
wasn't.
other
I
places.
thought there would be, but there wasn't. And so
Mark
I
was there. Mark Winter cleaned everything out
Yeah,
years
that's
ago.
right. That's right. So I ended up going down, and we moved to Santa Fe.
Oh, and so that was like 92, something like that?
That was probably 93
Yeah.
or 4. I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah. So, and then
I didn't know you'd been there that early. Mm-hmm. And how long did you stay in Santa Fe for that trip?
a few years
I was
there.
going to say, because we know you're I'm already learning every 2 to 4 years you're going to make a move.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what my son Ryland is like. Poor guy. He never stayed in one place. And now he hasn't been able to settle down since he
Yeah.
graduated from university. You
Yeah.
know, it's like it'll happen one day. But he cursed it, but now he kind of thinks it's a blessing.
Yeah. So you were in Santa Fe, and so in '94. That was a big time. There was a lot of stuff going on.
And I became good friends with Morning Star and all the galleries, and I would go, and Doug would give me lists for things that they needed for their stores, the Ralph Lauren stores,
Right.
the Double RL stores, and I would just go and collect
Search.
stuff and send it out to them, and then they'd rent stuff or buy stuff or
Right.
whatever, and it was just great. It
So
was
you were
booming.
learning a lot.
Business was booming,
Yeah.
and Terry was
This is
started
Terry
her.
Schumeyer, who's
Terry
also-
Schumeyer started Cowboys and Indians
Yeah.
in Albuquerque, and
I remember when she started it.
yeah, I helped her build some of those, display things, and helped them out a bit,
And when did you start working with Kim Martindale? Because that's, I think, how I really first met you, is associated with
as soon as
those
I started
shows.
doing those shows, those early '90s shows, I did all the circuit. I came to Santa Fe, and then I went to Marin. I mean, I did them all, and I was helping him because and that's how I met Terry. It's like I would say, hey, I'm in town. I don't want to, can I help out?
Right. You had good organizational skills.
Yeah,
you knew
and
the
so
material, and you're a nice person.
No, I was helping to paint walls and
Yeah,
build
that's
walls
part of the
and
deal.
like all that stuff,
That's
put
part of it.
wallpaper on and that kind of stuff. I mean, I was like, whatever needed to be done, you just tell me, or I would do paperwork, or I
Yeah.
would help check people in. And so I earned my part of my booth that way. So it would help me, financially.
Right.
So yeah, I was doing the shows since the early.
Yeah, I did.
Like 92, I think.
I did
it was.
Kim's and Kim Martindale's in Marin in '89. That was the first time I did that show.
Oh, okay.
I was still a doctor.
Yeah.
I had to run back to get back to the naval base, or actually the Marine Corps at that time, Marine base, and Kim was like, well, you can't leave. And I'm like, I got to leave, brother. And he's like, well, you can't take your booth apart before 5 o'clock. I go, I got to, didn't know that, but I've got to catch a plane. And,
Yeah.
I have to be on duty, like in the emergency room. So this is the only flight. He's like, well, don't do that one again.
Dr. Mark.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've never left a booth early since then. I learned
Yeah,
my lesson.
yeah,
Okay,
he
I
gets
wait. Yeah,
pretty
yeah, right, Lisa. I understand it.
Yeah, that's
So, he told me don't do it. And
yeah.
I said, well, we're
So
going to do it
yeah,
this time.
that's when I was doing all the shows, like the Marin show, the Santa Fe shows, which back then it was they had a Western show. They had
Yes.
an ethnographic, a Western show,
Right.
and an Indian show, and
Yeah.
I did all of them. And I did
Those
the
were Don Bennett
the
at
Marin
that
show.
time.
It was Don Bennett owned it at that time.
And Kim kind of really helped him do the whole show.
Kim was kind of doing all the
He was doing the show, actually,
Yeah.
probably.
yeah.
And then it got sold, and then...
And then, well, he was supposed to sell it to Kim.
And
but,
it didn't, but he went into his own, so he does
little
his own.
betrayal there. And that was not pretty, but yeah. So, but yeah, I kept doing it,
And you're still doing these, right?
and I'm still doing these shows. Yeah.
And do you enjoy it
Shermeyer.
as much as you did?
Yeah. Well, I do enjoy it. I really enjoy finding the stuff, and I enjoy selling it and seeing the joy that people get from, like I did, from buying this stuff. And so we,
And you do the LA Art Show with Martindale, too, which is a different ball of wax,
Yeah,
right?
I see. I started once I started getting into, when I got divorced in '98 and I left Santa Fe, I, moved back to LA, and I had to regroup with Ryland, and he was, the only one at home at that point. And I just thought, I got to reinvent myself. Things are, so I ended up working for Kim at the LA Art Show,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually managing that, and eventually managing the Marin show for him. And so that kind of, and then gradually I found my way back into doing my own art again, and doing the buying and selling of the stuff I love.
Yeah, and when did you start really going, okay, I should be selling my own art? Because I remember when I saw it for the first time in a booth at the Santa Fe Object
Yeah.
Show, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know. I know you, but I didn't know you.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed with what you were, I could see it, that you
Yeah.
had extreme talent.
Thank you.
And that you had been hiding, it seemed like, but maybe not so much.
Well, I just was incubating.
Yeah, well, that happens.
It was just kind of and absorbing lots of things, like in being at the art shows and seeing what was going on there, and like just feeling what was going on inside myself and where the direction that I was pulled in. And it was about 10 years ago, and I was living in Marina Del Rey and running things for Kim, and I just went, you know what, I can't do that. I can't give my life up. I have to start
Creating.
And I just drew a line in the sand. I said, I'm going to start doing my own art again. And then once I started building these things, and it started out with these little boxes and cool things, I was like, all this stuff I've been collecting, all these items, that it's all for a reason. These were like to go in these boxes. And so then I realized, oh, well, I can't keep accumulating art. I have to start. So I thought, okay, the next thing is I'm going to get a show. So I started, I just put that out there into the universe. And suddenly I found out a friend of mine was putting on a show, and it was Assemblage. And I said, can I get in on that show? And even though they kind of had the show set with 3 people, they let me come in. And so that was my first show in LA. It was in the Moriort Gallery, which doesn't exist anymore because it was just this beautiful old big theater. Anyway.
What happened to them? Do you know?
Well, it wasn't. I guess they weren't supposed to actually have events in that building. They were.
Yeah.
They were a studio, and then
Right.
they would open up to do these events, and then they were weren't. And they had already been around and around with legalities of taking this theater and completely gutting it.
Yeah.
So they were not. Anyway, so that was amazing. That was a good experience. I sold pieces.
And that was like 10 years ago?
That was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I started making stuff 10 years ago, but I didn't get a show until for at least a year. And then my brother opened a gallery up in Ukiah, and he wanted to do a big assemblage show. So he did this West Coast, assemblage show. And so then I just started getting invited to shows. People started seeing me out there. I did just whatever came up. And then Kim saw my work, and he commissioned a piece, and he invited me to do the Objects of Art show in Santa Fe.
And was that when that's when I first saw it,
That's when
right?
you first saw me. Yeah.
And I know what I said when I saw your work. I said, this is too cheap.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did. And I
It
said,
was.
well, I've got to be organically growing here. I can't just boom,
Yeah.
here she comes with, big expensive art.
Yeah.
Just let it kind of
Work its way up.
trickle up.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was too cheap.
Yeah,
I
so
should have just bought everything, the whole
so
show
then
out.
you came and said to me,
Yeah.
are you,
Yeah, I
do you
wanna
have representation?
Yeah,
I want to represent you.
Yeah, no,
so
that's exactly right.
That was awesome.
Yeah, no,
That was
I
a
know.
great moment.
I know an artist when I see it. I know when something is really unique and different, and I was like, wow, it's really shocking when you think you know somebody for a long time. I've known you for a long time, 28 years. I thought 30. You said 28. And then you see a different side of them that you didn't even know existed at all. In a context, you go, how could I miss that? Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to miss it if I see it. And I know you, which makes it really wonderful as a dealer if you already know what the person is like.
Yeah.
Because it is a relationship that you have to have with these individuals as artists. And,
Right.
And if you want it to be a win-win for everybody, and if you know you're going to get along with them anyway, I know I'm going to get along with you.
If you thought I was some shady dealer, you were like, oh, I don't know if I want to deal with
Yes,
this person.
same thing on your side too.
Sure.
Yes.
And I knew you were. I just always loved, what you were doing, and we'd always had a good, respectful relationship.
Oh,
so
very
that's
much
good.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I said, well, I'm going to show you work, and I have, and you just brought us some great pieces that are fantastic. And so how is that going? That part of so this is your new chapter. I mean, you've been doing it 10 years as an artist and making progress. I think steady progress. It seems like. How do you see that playing out in the next 10 years? Let's say.
Well, I try not to, project too much. I'm
Live
really,
for the moment?
I'm into letting things grow naturally. And I don't know I'm not the kind of person who's going to go out there and trying to hustle my way into this or that. I just, I feel like things unfold the way they should if they're going to be solid. And that's just how I do. That's just how I work.
Yeah. So you're going to let it unfold.
I'm letting it unfold.
And you've shown at the art show in L.A.
The last 3 years,
yeah.
I've been at the L.A. Art Show, and the first year I went, Kim said, how many pieces do you have? I need to fill a big space. And I said, well, I think I have 13 or 14. So I ended up bringing 13 pieces and selling 5 of them at the show.
And that's a big major show with lots of important
That's a major international
artists.
show. So that was very encouraging. And then last year I sold some pieces, and this year I didn't sell anything, but I got a lot of people wanting me to do.
And we had a show which we did well with, and then that show went on.
I had my first solo show with
oh, wow.
your gallery.
Oh,
that
wow.
was really fantastic.
And then you had that show travel to Santa Fe in the summer, and it did well as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do really well at the Santa Fe show.
So what I would tell my listeners out there that you better hop on this train because it's still just taking off.
It's still chugging along.
It's fun to see that
and moving forward.
Yeah, it is moving forward, and you have all the right, basic needs filled. I mean, you have it all.
Yeah.
You know, I think some of that is just getting exposure and letting people see. I mean, if your stuff was in a New York gallery, hanging with, other individuals of, high elk, they'd be like, oh, these should be 20,000, 30,000. So,
Yeah. Well, and I was in the LA Art Show. I was showing alongside Picasso, which was
I'm sure. There's
wonderful.
Lots of, no. I mean, that's a big major show.
Yeah.
And that's on your,
in the same booth though.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which was really exciting.
That is very exciting.
Yeah.
And did the Picasso sell?
No, but last year I did.
Yeah, yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So your outlook is just keep making art, work.
I have to.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
kind of
That's
just,
an artist.
I really need to. It's my voice. And this is what I was looking for, my voice through music. And I never felt like I was really that good, but I really just wanted to do it because I loved it. But with the art, I just feel like, I don't care. It's just like, this is it for me. This is what I need to do.
Yeah, comes from the gut.
It does.
Yeah.
It absolutely. And I feel like the pieces, the objects, everything, they once I get into my studio and they start talking to me, and it just, there's like this road I go down with them.
And you don't really have a preconceived idea exactly how you're going to make a piece?
Only a few times has that happened, where I had a dream one time that I was making this one piece with all these boxes. And I woke up that morning and I went into my studio and I started making that piece, and it took me, a week to put it all together, but it was already formulated in my head from a dream, and that's I've had a few times where I get a vision of something. And then
totally
I make it.
that.
But most of the time it starts with a few pieces.
Nuggets.
That just like,
Speak
I go, I need to make something with this. And then I go in there and I start playing around with stuff. And then I can start one way and it just completely takes another direction. It's really.
And how do you know when your piece is finished?
You just look at it and you go, okay, this is it. I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, to me, that's a fully developed artist when they can do that. When they can know the end point.
This is where it was going.
Yep.
Right here.
Yeah, that's very hard for a lot of artists, especially beginning artists, I think, is they don't know when they finished. And they just don't know. And sometimes they have to have people tell them, but a lot of times I think it's because they haven't made enough art.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let the piece speak to you. And it sounds like, Victoria Roberts, you have found your voice. Your creative voice, and you can see Victoria's work in my gallery, but you can also see her at different shows that she does, and she also does the Native American material too. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see all her beautiful jewelry, all very nice. I tried to buy her one of her bracelets, but she refused to even let me, and she took it off, but that was about as far as it went. Thank you so much for coming, and
thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, no, you're fantastic. I love you as an artist and as a person. You're a terrific human being. Thank you. Art Dealer Dyers, Victoria
Thanks.
Roberts. All right. Cool story. I know. Very cool stories. All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Man Gallery, located for over 26 years in Tucson, Arizona, specializing in antique Native American art, early Western art, including the famed Maynard Dixon, as well as modern art. You can find everything online at medicinemangallery.com. There's over 6,000 objects to select from. Also, the Charles Bloom Murder Mystery Series, written by yours truly, me, Mark Sublette. There's 6 books in this series, and they follow the protagonist Charles Bloom through all the intrigue of the art world set in Santa Fe and the Navajo Nation. These can be found on Audible, ebooks, Amazon, and of course, the gallery at medicinemangallery.com.